The morning light felt wrong against my scalp, too direct, too cold. My fingers reached up instinctively, expecting to find the silver waves I'd carefully styled the night before. Instead, they met smooth, bare skin. My heart stopped. The mirror across the guest room confirmed the impossible. My head had been shaved completely bald. On the dresser, my mother of the bride dress lay ruined, bleach stains spreading like cancer across the silk. A note in my daughter's handwriting simply read, "Mom, this was Victoria's idea. Please understand." Today was Rachel's wedding day, and I'd been erased from it. My name is Eleanor Gardner, Ellie to those who still care to use it, and at 68 years old, I thought I'd experienced every form of betrayal life could offer. But standing in my daughter's guest bedroom at 6:30 in the morning, staring at my bald reflection, I realized I'd been wrong. The shock hadn't fully registered yet. My hands trembled as they explored the alien terrain of my scalp, searching for any trace of the hair I'd spent 3 hours at the salon perfecting just yesterday. Nothing, not even stubble. Someone had taken an electric razor to my head while I slept and done it with surgical precision. The ruined dress caught my eye again. I'd saved for 6 months to buy it. A modest but elegant navy blue piece that made me feel beautiful without trying to compete with the bride. Now it looked like someone had thrown acid on it. The bleach had eaten through the fabric in places, leaving gaping holes surrounded by sickly white stains. My legs gave out and I sank onto the edge of the bed. The note lay crumpled in my fist. Victoria's idea. My future son-in-law's mother, a woman who owned 3 country clubs and never let anyone forget it. But Rachel, my Rachel, had gone along with it, had probably held the razor herself. Through the thin walls, I heard movement in the kitchen, voices, Rachel's distinctive laugh, followed by her fiancé Michael's deeper tones. They were having breakfast as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't violated me in my sleep. "You can't have her outshining you, baby," Michael was saying. "Your mom's tough. She'll understand." "I know, but I still feel—" Rachel's voice dropped lower, and I pressed my ear against the wall. Victoria was right, though. Mom would have tried to wear her grandmother's pearls or something. You know how she gets when she attempts to dress up. It's embarrassing. Embarrassing. The word hit me like a physical blow. I'd raised this girl alone after Charles died, worked double shifts to keep her in private school, gone without so she could have everything. And I was embarrassing. "At least this way she has an excuse to stay in the background," Rachel continued. "Victoria said we could say she had a medical emergency, sudden illness. No one will question it." I pulled away from the wall, my chest tight with something beyond rage. They weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were trying to erase me entirely. Make me disappear from my only daughter's wedding because I didn't fit the image they wanted to project. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Rachel. "Mom, I left you a nice scarf in the drawer. Please wear it and the backup dress I bought. It's simple but appropriate. The ceremony starts at 2. Love you." Love you? The words mocked me as I opened the drawer. Inside was a cheap polyester dress in beige, the kind of thing you'd wear to clean houses, and a scarf clearly meant to hide my baldness. This was their solution. Transform me into something invisible, forgettable. Someone who could fade into the background without causing any disturbance to their perfect day. I stood up slowly, catching sight of myself again in the mirror. Without hair, my face looked sharper, more angular. My eyes seemed larger, and in them, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. The woman I used to be before I started making myself small for everyone else's comfort. From somewhere in the house, Victoria's shrill voice joined the conversation. "Is she awake yet? We need to brief her on the story. I've already told my friends she's been undergoing chemotherapy. They'll be so sympathetic. They won't even notice what she's wearing." Chemotherapy? They were going to lie and say I had cancer to explain what they'd done to me. My hands stopped shaking. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder, more calculated. They thought they knew me, thought they could predict how I'd react, that I'd put on their shabby dress, cover my head in shame, and play the role of the sick, pathetic mother who shouldn't draw attention. They had no idea who they were dealing with. the Eleanor Gardner who had built a small empire alongside her husband, who had made decisions that shaped dozens of lives, who had chosen to hide that power for her daughter's sake. That woman was still in here, and she was done hiding. I walked to the window and looked out at the pristine lawn where the reception tent stood ready. In a few hours, it would be filled with Atlanta's elite, all there to celebrate the union of two prominent families. Rachel and Victoria had made one critical error in their cruel plan. They'd given me time, 7.5 hours to be exact. It was more than enough. The past has a way of feeling both distant and immediate when you're forced to confront it. As I sat in that guest room, listening to my daughter plan my erasure, I couldn't help but think of Charles and the life we'd built together. We'd met when I was 23, a newly graduated nurse working at Emory Hospital. Charles was 35, already successful in commercial real estate, but it wasn't his money that attracted me. It was his vision, the way he saw potential in abandoned buildings and empty lots where others saw nothing. We married within a year, and I left nursing to help manage his growing portfolio. By the time Rachel was born, we owned 12 properties across Atlanta. By her 5th birthday, that number had tripled. Charles had a gift for anticipating market trends, and I had a talent for managing the delicate relationships that made deals possible. We were partners in every sense, building something that would last generations. Then came that awful morning in March, 25 years ago. Charles collapsed in our kitchen, dead of a massive heart attack at 52. Rachel was only 7, too young to understand why Daddy wouldn't wake up, too young to grasp what we'd lost beyond just her father. In my grief, I made a decision that would shape both our lives, looking at the lawyers and accountants who descended like vultures, at the suddenly attentive relatives who'd ignored us for years. I saw what wealth could do to people. More importantly, I saw what it might do to my daughter. So I hid it, all of it. The properties went into a complex trust. The investment accounts were moved offshore. The art collection went into climate-controlled storage. I kept just enough to maintain a middle-class existence, a modest house in Decatur, a reliable Honda, public school for Rachel. The lawyers thought I'd lost my mind, but I was thinking clearly for the first time since Charles died. I wanted Rachel to know struggle, to understand the value of work, to develop character that didn't depend on a trust fund. Most of all, I wanted her to form relationships with people who didn't know about the money, who couldn't be influenced by it. For 2 decades, I played the part perfectly. Eleanor Gardner, the widow who got by on her husband's life insurance and her own careful budgeting. I clipped coupons, shopped sales, wore the same clothes for years. When Rachel's friends' mothers showed up in designer outfits, I appeared in Target clearance finds. When she was embarrassed by our aging Honda at school pickup, I told her we couldn't afford better. The deception required constant vigilance. I had to remember which bills to complain about, which vacations we couldn't afford, which restaurants were too expensive for us. When Rachel got into Columbia, I made a show of taking out loans, even as I could have written a check for her entire education without blinking. And it worked. Perhaps too well. Rachel learned to be ashamed of our circumstances, of me. She started lying about where we lived, making excuses for why friends couldn't come over. In college, she reinvented herself completely, crafting a biography that conveniently omitted her working-class roots. When she met Michael at a charity gala she'd snuck into, she told him her father had been in investments. Not entirely false, but far from the whole truth. By the time she introduced us, 6 months into their relationship, she'd coached me on what to say, what to wear, how to act. I was to be respectable but forgettable, middle class but not embarrassing. I played along, thinking it was a phase, thinking she'd outgrow this need to impress people like Victoria Hamilton Pierce, whose old money barely covered her new spending habits. I told myself that once Rachel was secure in her relationship, married with children of her own, she'd relax. We'd find our way back to each other. Instead, I'd raised a daughter who was so terrified of being seen as less than that she'd assault her own mother to maintain an image. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to teach her that money didn't matter, I'd created someone for whom appearances were everything. In hiding my power to protect her, I'd rendered myself powerless in her eyes. But the trust still existed. The properties, now worth 10 times what Charles had paid, still generated income. The offshore accounts had grown fat with decades of compound interest. The art collection had appreciated beyond our wildest dreams. All of it waiting, untouched, managed by discreet professionals who sent me quarterly reports I read and filed away. I'd lived as a ghost for 25 years, dimming my light so my daughter could find her own. But she hadn't found light. She'd found Victoria, Michael, and a world that valued surface over substance. And now they'd taken even my surface, left me bare and exposed, thinking they'd rendered me harmless. They were about to learn that Eleanor Gardner hadn't disappeared. She'd simply been waiting. The humiliation crystallized into perfect clarity as I stood there, bald and trembling with rage. This wasn't just about today. This was the culmination of years of small betrayals, each one cutting deeper than the last. I thought back to Rachel's college graduation. I'd driven 6 hours to Columbia, so proud I could barely contain it. My daughter, the first in our family to earn an Ivy League degree. I'd worn my best dress, a 5-year-old Ann Taylor piece I'd gotten on sale, and waited outside the ceremony hall with all the other parents. "Mom!" Rachel had rushed over, but her smile faltered when she saw me. "Oh, you wore that?" Before I could respond, she was steering me away from the main entrance. "My roommate's parents are having a thing at the Yale Club. Very small, very, maybe you should just meet me for dinner later." I spent graduation day alone in my hotel room, watching CNN and eating takeout Chinese. Rachel texted at 9:45 that night. "Sorry, lost track of time. See you at breakfast." We never had that breakfast. She was too hungover, and I drove home alone. Then came the engagement party. Victoria had insisted on hosting it at her country club, and Rachel had called me 2 weeks before with specific instructions. "Mom, please don't mention Dad's work, or where we lived when I was little, and maybe let me introduce you to people instead of just talking to them." At the party, I was introduced exactly 3 times, always as Rachel's mother with no other context, before being gently guided to a corner table where I spent the evening watching my daughter charm a room full of strangers. When the photographer came around, Rachel was always somehow engaged elsewhere. "We'll get some pictures later." "Mom," she'd promised, there were no pictures of us together from that night. The pattern was so clear now. Every milestone, every moment that should have been ours to share, had been carefully managed to minimize my presence. I was the embarrassing secret, the rough edge that needed filing down, the wrong note in her perfectly orchestrated life. But this, waking up bald on her wedding day, this was different. This was assault. This was Victoria and Rachel deciding that, even minimized, I was still too much, that the only acceptable version of me was one that didn't exist at all. I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly locked the bedroom door. Rachel knocked softly. "Mom, are you awake? We need to talk about today." I said nothing. "Mom, please. I know you're upset, but Victoria means well. She just wants everything to be perfect. You understand, right? It's my wedding day." Her wedding day. As if that justified anything. As if a bride's desire for perfection included the right to shave her mother's head in the night, like some kind of criminal punishment. "The story is that you've been having chemotherapy," Rachel continued through the door, "for lymphoma, early stage, very treatable. That way people will give you space and won't ask too many questions. Victoria already told her friends, so please don't contradict it." I remained silent, my fury building with each word. "I got you a really nice dress. It's comfortable and appropriate. The scarf is silk. Good quality. You'll look fine. Mom, better than fine. You'll look dignified." Dignified. Like a cancer patient they'd invented to cover their cruelty. "Mom?" Her voice was getting frustrated now. "I need to know you're not going to make a scene. This is important to me. To us. Michael's family has connections that could really help his career. We can't have any disruptions." Disruptions. That's what I was to her. A potential disruption to her carefully crafted image. "Fine," Rachel snapped when I still didn't respond. "Be that way, but I expect you downstairs by noon, dressed and ready to go. And Mom, please remember that this is bigger than just you. Think about my future, our future grandchildren. Don't ruin this for me." Her footsteps retreated, and I heard her complaining to Michael in their bedroom. "She's being so selfish. It's my wedding day, and she's making it about her." I walked to the mirror again, studying my reflection. Without hair. I looked raw, exposed, almost primal, but also powerful. There was something fierce in my eyes that I'd forgotten existed. The memory that surfaced surprised me. Charles and I at a charity gala in '95. Someone had made a snide comment about new money. Looking directly at us, I'd wanted to shrink away, but Charles had squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't you dare make yourself small for these people, Ellie. You're worth 10 of them." I'd forgotten that woman. The one who'd negotiated with contractors, who'd faced down zoning boards, who'd built an empire alongside her husband. She'd been buried under years of artificial poverty and forced humility, but she was still there. Looking at my bald head, I realized Victoria and Rachel had done me a favor. They'd stripped away the last pretense, the final illusion that I needed to keep playing this role. They'd shown me exactly what they thought of me, and in doing so, had freed me from any obligation to protect their feelings. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts to a number I hadn't called in years. James Morrison, my asset manager, answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Gardner? What a pleasant surprise. How can I help you?" "James," I said, my voice steady and clear, "I need you to prepare a comprehensive portfolio summary. Everything properties, accounts, holdings, full current valuations." There was a pause. "Of course. May I ask?" "And James, I'll need access to the Plaza Towers penthouse. Today. Have someone meet me there at 10 with keys and the security codes." "Certainly. Will you be... that is, are you planning to..." "I'm done hiding. James, it's time my daughter learned exactly who Eleanor Gardner really is." The Plaza Towers penthouse hadn't been opened in 25 years. As James unlocked the door, I felt like I was stepping back in time. Everything was exactly as Charles and I had left it, frozen in amber, waiting. "We've maintained it meticulously, as you instructed," James said, flipping on lights. "Weekly cleaning, climate control, security updates, it's move-in ready." The views of Atlanta's skyline took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city Charles had loved, where we'd built our dreams. I ran my hand along the Italian marble countertop, remembering the day we'd chosen it. "The styling team will be here in 30 minutes, James continued, checking his phone. "Andre himself is coming." He was intrigued by the situation. I'd called Andre Laurent from the car, using a name I hadn't spoken in decades. He'd styled Atlanta's elite for 40 years and remembered me well. "Eleanor Gardner? Charlie's wife. Mon Dieu, I thought you disappeared." "I did," I'd told him. "Now I'm reappearing, and I need to make a statement." While we waited, James spread documents across the dining table. The numbers were staggering. What had been a small real estate empire was now a massive portfolio worth over $300 million. The art collection alone, Rothko's, Pollock's, a small Basquiat, had appreciated to 8 figures. "There's more," James said, producing a velvet box. "The jewelry collection has been in the vault. Your husband had exquisite taste." Inside were pieces I'd forgotten. The Cartier necklace Charles had given me for our 10th anniversary, the Harry Winston earrings from Rachel's birth, the vintage Bulgari bracelet that had been his mother's. Each piece was a memory, a moment when I'd been someone who wore such things without apology. Andre arrived with an entire team. He took one look at my bald head and clapped his hands in delight. Darling, this is magnificent, so bold, so fierce. We'll work with it, not against it. They meant it as humiliation. I said, Then they're fools. A woman's power isn't in her hair, it's in her presence. And you, my dear, have presence. For the next 2 hours, I was transformed, not into someone new, but back into someone I'd always been. Andre selected a custom Valentino gown from his private collection, midnight blue silk that moved like water. I've been saving this for someone special, he said. It requires confidence to wear. You have that confidence. The makeup artist worked miracles, emphasizing my eyes, sculpting my cheekbones, without hair to soften my features. Everything was more dramatic, more striking. When she finished, I looked almost otherworldly, ethereal but dangerous. Now for the crown, Andre said, opening another box. Instead of a wig, he'd brought a delicate headpiece, platinum and diamonds that hugged my scalp like armor, turning my baldness into something deliberately chosen rather than inflicted. You look like a warrior queen, the makeup artist breathed. I felt like one. James had arranged for a driver, not just any car service, but a vintage Rolls-Royce that had been Charles's pride. As we pulled away from the Plaza Towers, I made 2 more calls. First, to Margaret Ashford, society columnist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and an old friend who'd always wondered about my disappearance from the social scene. Eleanor, is it really you? My God, where have you been? It's a long story. Margaret, one I think your readers would find interesting. Will you be at the Hamilton Pierce wedding today? Wouldn't miss it. Victoria's been bragging about it for months. Good, save me a dance. We have catching up to do. The second call was to Robert Thornton, Charles's old business partner who now ran the largest development firm in the Southeast. He'd tried to stay in touch after Charles died, confused by my sudden withdrawal. Ellie, Christ, it's been 2 decades? Too long. Robert, I hear you'll be at a wedding today? Victoria's boy, yeah, she strong-armed me into it. Why? Because I'll be there too. And I think it's time we discuss that Buckhead project Charles always wanted to do. By the time we reached Rachel's house, where I was supposed to be cowering in shame, I'd laid the groundwork for my re-emergence. The driver waited while I went inside, ostensibly to collect a few things. The house was chaos. Bridesmaids running everywhere, Victoria barking orders, Rachel in the center of it all looking radiant in her wedding dress. They didn't notice me slip in. I found Michael in the study, adjusting his bow tie. He saw me in the mirror and froze. Mrs. Gardner? What are you wearing? My mother of the bride outfit, I said calmly. I believe your mother had some concerns about my appearance. Please tell her those concerns have been addressed. He stumbled over his words, clearly recognizing that something had shifted, but unable to pinpoint what. I left him there and retrieved my purse from the guest room, pausing to leave the beige dress and scarf folded neatly on the bed with a note of my own. Thank you for the suggestion, but I've made other arrangements. See you at the ceremony. Mom. As I walked back through the house, conversation stopped. A bridesmaid dropped her champagne glass. Victoria emerged from the kitchen, took one look at me, and went pale beneath her spray tan. Eleanor, what have you done? Gotten dressed for my daughter's wedding, I replied. Isn't that what mothers do? I left them all standing there, mouths agape, and returned to the roles. As we pulled away, I saw Rachel run to the window, still in her wedding dress, her face a mask of shock and something else. Perhaps the first flicker of fear. She was about to learn what happened when you tried to erase Eleanor Gardner. You simply revealed who she'd been all along. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom buzzed with anticipation as Atlanta's elite gathered for what Victoria had promised would be the wedding of the season. I stood at the entrance, letting the moment stretch, feeling hundreds of eyes turn my way. The reaction was immediate and electric. Dear God, is that Eleanor Gardner? Charles's widow? But I thought she... Look at that dress and those diamonds. I moved through the crowd with deliberate grace, each step measured, each nod calculated. 25 years of absence had made me a mystery. and my dramatic return was already setting tongues wagging. Margaret Ashford intercepted me near the champagne fountain, her journalist's eyes bright with curiosity. "Eleanor Gardner, as I live and breathe, you look absolutely magnificent, that headpiece. André Laurent." "You always did have an excellent eye, Margaret." "I have an eye for stories, darling, and you're giving me front-page material." She lowered her voice. "The baldness, a choice, or let's call it an unexpected liberation," I said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Sometimes, losing what others think defines you reveals who you really are." Before Margaret could probe further, Robert Thornton appeared, looking distinguished in his tuxedo. "Ellie, my God, when you called, I didn't quite believe. You look incredible." "Robert." I extended my hand, which he kissed in the old-fashioned way Charles had taught him. "It's been too long." "Too long? You vanished. One day we're business partners. The next you're gone. Charles would have understood," I said gently. "I had my reasons, but I'm back now, and I believe we have unfinished business. The Buckhead development?" His eyes sharpened. "You still have the land?" "All 40 acres, prime location. Charles always said it would be perfect for luxury mixed use." "Do you have any idea what that's worth now? The area's exploded. We're talking—" "9 figures, minimum," I finished. "Shall we discuss it over lunch next week?" Word of my conversation with Robert spread like wildfire. Within minutes, I was surrounded by people who'd ignored my existence for decades, all suddenly eager to reconnect. I fielded their interest with practiced ease, dropping just enough hints about my resources to fuel speculation without confirming anything concrete. Then I saw her, Victoria Hamilton Pierce, holding court near the wedding party's table, her face increasingly strained as reports of my presence reached her. Our eyes met across the room. She whispered furiously to one of her friends, then began pushing through the crowd toward me. I turned to greet Judge Harrison and his wife, deliberately giving Victoria my back. The power play wasn't lost on those watching. "Eleanor," Victoria's voice cut through the conversation. "We need to talk, privately." I turned slowly, letting her see the full effect of Andre's work, where this morning she'd expected to find a cowed, cancer-stricken embarrassment. She now faced someone who outshone her in every way. "Victoria, how lovely you look. Though I must say, your color seems a bit off. Are you feeling well?" Her spray-tanned face flushed darker. "What are you playing at?" "Playing?" I touched the diamonds at my throat. "I'm attending my daughter's wedding. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to be here?" "Not like this. You're making a spectacle." "Am I?" I gestured to the crowd around us, all pretending not to eavesdrop. "I thought I was simply greeting old friends. So many people have wondered where I've been. It seems rude not to satisfy their curiosity." "The story was that you have cancer," she hissed. "What story? I never agreed to any story." I sipped my champagne. "Though I must thank you for your concern about my health. As you can see, I've never felt better." Amazing what a good night's sleep can do, though mine was rather unexpectedly interrupted. Her face went from red to white. "You can't prove—" "Prove what, Victoria? That someone entered my room while I slept? That they shaved my head? Destroyed my dress? What kind of person would do such a thing?" I let my voice carry just enough. Only someone truly threatened by another woman's presence. I imagine someone deeply insecure about their own position. Whispers rippled through the nearby guests. Victoria's carefully maintained composure cracked. "How dare you!" "Oh, I dare quite a lot, actually. You'll find that out." I leaned closer, my voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. "You wanted me erased. Victoria, congratulations. You erased the fiction I'd been maintaining. What's left is the truth, and the truth is going to destroy you." Before she could respond, the wedding coordinator announced it was time to be seated for the ceremony. I moved toward the family section, ignoring Victoria's strangled protest that I was supposed to sit in the back. "I'm the mother of the bride," I said clearly. "I sit where mothers sit." Rachel appeared in the doorway, a vision in white lace, and saw me in the front row. Her bridal smile faltered, then forced itself back into place. But I saw the panic in her eyes, the realization that her carefully orchestrated production was spinning out of control. As the music began, I stood with everyone else, turning to watch my daughter walk down the aisle. She looked beautiful. I had to admit, the dress was exquisite, the flowers perfect, every detail precisely planned. Except for me, the mother she'd tried to erase, now impossible to ignore. Standing in designer silk and heritage diamonds like a specter from the past she'd tried to bury. As she passed my row, our eyes met, in hers. I saw the question she couldn't ask. What are you doing? In mine, she found her answer. What I should have done years ago. The ceremony began, but the real show had already started, and I was just getting warmed up. The cocktail hour was when Victoria made her move. She cornered me near the terrace doors, flanked by two of her country club cronies like some sort of suburban mafia. We need to settle this before the reception, she said, her voice low and threatening. Whatever game you're playing ends now. I set down my champagne flute with deliberate calm. Game? I'm not the one who broke into someone's room at 3 a.m. with a razor. You can't prove that. Can I? I touched my bare scalp, the diamonds of the headpiece catching the light. Security cameras are everywhere these days. Victoria, even in private homes, especially in private homes where valuable items are kept. Her face went ashen. You're bluffing. Am I? Your son Michael installed quite an impressive system last month. He was so proud, showing Rachel all the hidden cameras. Every hallway, every room entrance, night vision, motion activated, cloud storage. He even gave me the app to monitor my room. I smiled. Technology is wonderful, isn't it? One of her friends stepped back, clearly wanting no part of whatever was unfolding. Victoria grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging in. What do you want? Money, is that it? I looked down at her hand on my $300,000 dress, then back at her face. You think this is about money? You still don't understand, do you? You never bothered to find out who I really was. You just saw what Rachel told you to see. A poor widow, an embarrassment to be managed. Then what? What could you possibly want? Respect, I said simply. For my daughter to look at me and see something other than a source of shame. For you to understand that your perceived superiority is built on nothing but prejudice and insecurity. Don't lecture me about, Ellie, is everything all right here? We turned to find Judge Harrison approaching, concern etched on his distinguished features. Behind him, I noticed several other prominent guests watching our interaction. Judge Harrison, I smiled warmly. Victoria and I were just discussing family dynamics. She's been so involved in planning this wedding, every little detail. Yes, I heard she was quite hands-on, he said, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. He'd been a friend of Charles's, and the look he gave Victoria suggested he'd heard more than she'd like. Eleanor, I've been meaning to ask, that Buckhead property of yours, still undeveloped. Victoria's grip on my arm loosened as she processed this information. I gently extracted myself from her grasp. For now, but Robert Thornton and I are discussing possibilities. Excellent. Charles always had vision for that land. Prime location. He turned to Victoria. Did you know Eleanor and Charles were among the earliest investors in Atlanta's revitalization? Visionaries. Really, the Gardner portfolio is quite legendary among those of us in the know. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I could see her recalibrating, trying to reconcile this information with the woman she dismissed and abused. I didn't realize. No, I said quietly. You didn't. You saw what you wanted to see, what Rachel encouraged you to see, a nobody, someone whose presence would diminish your son's standing, so you decided to erase me. It wasn't, we only thought. You thought you could humiliate me into hiding, make me disappear so your society friends wouldn't have to see Rachel's poor mother. I leaned closer. Tell me, Victoria, How's that working out for you?" Rachel appeared at her mother-in-law's shoulder, still in her wedding gown but with panic written across her features. "Mom, please, can we discuss this privately?" "Privately? Like when you privately shaved my head while I slept? That kind of private." Judge Harrison's eyebrows shot up. Several nearby guests stopped pretending they weren't listening. "Mom!" Rachel's voice was desperate. "It's my wedding day!" "Yes, it is. The day you marry into Victoria's family. The day you officially become someone who thinks it's acceptable to assault and humiliate your own mother for the crime of existing." I turned to face her fully. "Tell me, Rachel, what did you think would happen? That I'd curl up and die of shame? That I'd vanish like you've been trying to make me vanish for years? I never... Your graduation, your engagement party, every milestone where you've hidden me away like something shameful, and now this." I gestured to my head. "The ultimate erasure." "You don't understand," Rachel said, tears starting to smear her perfect makeup. "You've always been so... Poor, common, embarrassing," I supplied. "Except I never was. Rachel, that was a choice I made. A sacrifice. One I'm done making." Michael materialized beside his bride. His face flushed. "What's going on? People are starting to talk." "Oh, they're talking all right," Victoria said bitterly. "Your mother-in-law has decided to make a scene." "A scene?" I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "I haven't even started. Wait until the speeches." "You wouldn't," Victoria gasped. "Wouldn't I? You clearly don't know me at all. But then, you never tried to, did you? Too busy looking down on the woman you thought I was to see the woman I am." "Mom, please," Rachel begged. "We can work this out after the wedding. We'll talk. We'll what? Pretend this never happened? Go back to you being ashamed of me while I pretend not to notice?" I shook my head, the diamonds catching fire in the light. "No, darling, that woman, the one who made herself small for your comfort, she's gone. You killed her this morning with a razor and bleach." I walked away from them then, leaving them to deal with the growing whispers and speculative looks. The wedding coordinator was frantically trying to herd people toward the reception hall, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen Victoria and Rachel's stricken faces, had heard enough to know something was terribly wrong. As I entered the reception hall, I caught sight of myself in one of the gilt mirrors. The bald head that was meant to humiliate me had become a crown of defiance. The diamonds that adorned it weren't just jewelry, they were armor. Victoria wanted me erased. Instead, she'd created something far more dangerous. Eleanor Gardner unleashed. The reception was about to begin, and I had a speech to give. The reception was in full swing when the moment arrived. The best man had just finished his toast, and the wedding coordinator was signaling for Victoria to speak next, but I was already standing, champagne flute in hand, moving toward the microphone before anyone could stop me. "Good evening," I said, my voice clear and strong through the speakers. "For those who don't know me, and I suspect that's most of you, I'm Eleanor Gardner, Rachel's mother." A ripple of recognition went through the crowd. The mysterious woman who'd captivated everyone's attention during cocktail hour was the mother of the bride they'd been told was too ill to participate. I know tradition dictates that mothers speak after the mother of the groom, but then again, this hasn't been a traditional day. I touched my bald head deliberately. As you can see, I've recently undergone a rather dramatic transformation. Nervous laughter scattered through the room. I could see Victoria half standing, Michael restraining her, Rachel frozen at the head table like a deer in headlights. 25 years ago, I continued, I lost my husband Charles. Some of you knew him, a visionary who saw potential where others saw impossibility. When he died, I made a choice. I chose to step back, to live quietly, to raise our daughter without the complications that wealth can bring. I paused, scanning the room. Margaret Ashford had her phone out, discreetly recording. Judge Harrison watched with keen interest. Robert Thornton nodded slowly, pieces falling into place. I wanted Rachel to understand the value of hard work, of genuine relationships, of character over currency. So I lived modestly. I clipped coupons. I wore the same clothes for years. I became someone small and unremarkable, all for love of my daughter. My voice hardened slightly, but somewhere along the way, my sacrifice became her shame. My simplicity became her embarrassment. The mother who had given up everything to teach her values became the mother she hid from her new world. "Mom, please," Rachel's voice cracked from the head table. I continued as if she hadn't spoken. "This morning, I woke up to find my head shaved while I slept, my dress destroyed with bleach. A note explaining this was done so I wouldn't outshine the mother of the groom, so I would know my place." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Phones appeared at every table as guests began documenting this unexpected drama. At first, I was devastated. What kind of person would do such a thing? What kind of daughter would allow it? I looked directly at Rachel. Then I realized, the kind who never knew who her mother really was, who saw only what I showed her, never questioning what lay beneath. I raised my glass to the room, so let me introduce myself properly. I am Eleanor Gardner, widow of Charles Gardner. Together, we built one of Atlanta's most successful real estate portfolios. I own properties you pass every day, art that hangs in private collections, resources that could buy this hotel several times over. The silence was deafening. I am not the poor relation you were told about. I am not suffering from cancer, despite what Victoria Hamilton Pierce told her friends. I am simply a mother who loved her daughter enough to hide her own light, hoping that daughter would find her own. I turned to face Rachel directly. "But you didn't find your light, darling. You found shame. You found fear. You found people who told you that your worth came from hiding your roots, from erasing your past, from quite literally erasing your mother." Tears streamed down Rachel's face, her makeup running in dark rivers. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady as steel. "This marriage will proceed. You've made your choice, and you'll live with it. But understand this. The mother you were ashamed of no longer exists. You killed her this morning with your cruelty and cowardice." I looked around the room one more time, to those who've wondered where Eleanor Gardner disappeared to all these years. Wonder no more. I'm back. And to those who thought they could diminish me, dismiss me, or erase me, I looked pointedly at Victoria. "You've taught me the price of hiding. It's a price I'll never pay again." I set down the microphone and walked through the silent ballroom with my head high. As I reached the doors, a single person began clapping, then another. By the time I pushed through the doors, scattered applause followed me out, not universal, but enough to know that some understood what they'd just witnessed. Behind me, I heard the chaos erupting, Victoria shrieking about lawyers and slander, Rachel sobbing, Michael trying to restore order, the wedding coordinator having what sounded like a nervous breakdown. But I didn't look back. Eleanor Gardner, the real Eleanor Gardner, didn't look back. The valet brought the rolls around, and as I slid into the leather seats, I caught my reflection in the window. Bald, fierce, and absolutely magnificent. They'd tried to break me by taking my hair. Instead, they'd revealed the warrior underneath. "Where to, Mrs. Gardner?" the driver asked. "Home," I said, "my real home, the Plaza Towers." As we pulled away from the Ritz, I saw guests spilling out of the entrance, phones in hand, already spreading the story of the wedding that had become Atlanta's most shocking social event in decades. By morning, everyone would know what Victoria and Rachel had done, and everyone would know that Eleanor Gardner was not a woman to be trifled with. The war was over. I had won. The Plaza Towers penthouse glowed in the evening light as I stood at the windows. Atlanta spread before me like a jeweled map. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since I'd left the reception, but I ignored it. There would be time for damage control, for lawyers, for whatever came next. Right now, I needed this moment of absolute victory. The door chimed, and James appeared with a bottle of champagne. "Congratulations seem to be in order," he said, popping the cork. Margaret Ashford's already posted a teaser on social media. The comments are explosive. I accepted the glass he offered. Let them talk. 25 years of silence. Perhaps it's time for some noise. We stood in companionable quiet, watching the city lights begin to twinkle. Then James cleared his throat. If I may ask, what made you finally do it, after all these years of hiding? I touched my bare scalp, still strange but no longer shocking. They crossed a line. James, it's one thing to be ashamed of me, to hide me away like an embarrassing secret, but to violate me while I slept, to assault me in my most vulnerable moment, that wasn't just cruelty. It was erasure. And the money? The properties? You're really going public with everything? Every cent, every building, every piece of art. I smiled, and it felt like freedom. You know what the ironic part is? If they just accepted me, the manufactured version, the quiet widow, I would have kept playing the role. I would have died with the secret intact, leaving Rachel to discover the truth in my will. But they couldn't even accept that version. No, even diminished. I was too much for them. Victoria needed me completely erased, and Rachel... My voice caught slightly. Rachel agreed, my own daughter agreed that I shouldn't exist at her wedding. A knock at the door interrupted us. James went to answer it, returning with a bemused expression. You have a visitor. Several, actually. Security's holding them in the lobby. I checked the security monitor. Rachel stood in the marble lobby, still in her wedding dress, but disheveled now. Makeup ruined. Michael was with her, bow tie undone, looking shell-shocked, but no Victoria. Send them up, I said after a long moment. When they entered, Rachel looked so young, so lost, that for a moment my heart wavered. Then I remembered waking up bald, reading her note, hearing her explain to Michael why I needed to be hidden. Mom, she started, then stopped, taking in the penthouse, the art, the view, the visible wealth she'd never imagined. Is this really yours? Mine, your father's, ours. I remained by the window, not moving toward her. This is one of 12 properties in the portfolio. There are houses in Aspen, Martha's Vineyard, a ranch in Montana, all sitting empty while I played poor for your benefit. I don't understand. Why would you... Because I loved you more than I loved myself. Because I wanted you to grow up valuing character over cash. Because I thought if you learned to live without wealth, you'd learn what actually mattered. Michael found his voice. The Buckhead property. Robert Thornton said it's worth more than your mother's entire net worth. Yes. I turned to face them. Your prenup protects your assets from Rachel. Did you know it doesn't work in reverse? That anything she inherits is solely hers? His face went pale as the implications hit him. Rachel sank onto the leather sofa, wedding dress pooling around her. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. When Victoria suggested... Suggested? She suggested shaving your mother's head while she slept. She said you'd try to upstage her, that you'd wear something inappropriate or make a scene. She said it was better if you had an excuse to stay in the background. And you believed her. Rachel's voice broke. I've been so ashamed for so long of our house, our car, the way you dressed. I just wanted to fit in, to belong somewhere. You belonged with me, I said quietly, but that was never enough, was it? I didn't know, she cried. How could I know when you hid everything? I hid money, Rachel, not love, not sacrifice, not 25 years of putting your needs before mine. Those were always visible. You just chose not to see them. Michael stepped forward. Mrs. Gardner, surely we can work this out. We're family now. No, I cut him off. We're not. Family doesn't drug family members and shave their heads. Family doesn't plot humiliation. Family doesn't erase each other for social convenience. What are you going to do? Rachel whispered. I considered the question. Live. Openly, honestly, without apology. I'm done hiding. Done making myself small. Done pretending to be less than I am. And us? What about us? That's up to you. You're married now. You have the family you chose, Victoria, Michael, that whole world that required my erasure for your entry. Live with that choice. You're cutting me off? She looked terrified. Financially, no. The trust fund your father established remains intact. You'll get your inheritance when I die, just as planned, but emotionally. That bridge burned this morning at 3:17 when you held my head still while your mother-in-law shaved it. I walked to the door and opened it. Your wedding reception is probably over by now. You should go. Start your new life with the family you've chosen. Rachel stood slowly, Michael supporting her, at the door. She turned back one last time. For what it's worth, you looked beautiful today. Powerful. Like Dad would have wanted. Your father, I said evenly, would have been horrified by what you did, but he would have been proud of how I handled it. They left then, the door closing with a soft click that felt like the end of a symphony. I returned to the window, raising my champagne glass to my reflection. Bald, fierce, and finally free. To Charles, I whispered. To the woman you always knew I was. Atlanta glittered below, full of people who would wake tomorrow to the story of Victoria Hamilton Pierce's spectacular social destruction. But more importantly, they'd wake to the news that Eleanor Gardner, the real Eleanor Gardner, was back. And I was just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts on Eleanor's journey. What would you have done in her situation?